If you've got cash sitting in your current account right now, doing nothing, you've probably already asked yourself the question this video is built around. Where else could that money go? What's actually safer than just leaving it there? Here's the part most videos about this topic get wrong. If you're 58, not 28, the thing that quietly wrecks your retirement isn't 0% interest. It's putting that cash into the wrong, safer option for how many years you actually have left before you need it. You've probably seen the videos with the graph. £10,000 becomes £500,000 over 50 years, sitting in an index fund. That's true, and it's also close to useless for you. You don't have 50 years. You've got somewhere between 10 and 20, and that single difference changes which of these four options actually protects you, and which one quietly adds to the risk you're trying to get away from. So this video walks through 4 safer places for your savings, and the one variable that decides which of them actually fits someone your age. Not the textbook answer built for a 25-year-old with 4 decades ahead of them. The answer for someone who's already built the money and now has to protect it. If that's you, sitting on cash, not 28 anymore, and tired of advice built for someone else's calculator, subscribe. Every video on this channel is built around the version of these numbers that actually applies to your timeline. Leave £15,000 sitting in an ordinary current account for a year, and inflation running at 2.8% quietly takes about £420 of real spending power out of it. No market crash, no bad luck. The number on the statement never moves. That's exactly what makes it so easy to miss. 0% interest plus 2.8% inflation adds up to a guaranteed loss every year, and it compounds the longer that money sits untouched. The bank isn't breaking any rule by not mentioning this. A current account paying nothing is cheap money for them to hold. It costs you, and it costs them nothing, which is exactly why nobody at the branch brings it up. Here's the bit that most people miss on top of that. £420 isn't a one-off. It's every year that balance sits there, and the loss compounds on itself the same way growth does, just working in the wrong direction. Right now, something close to £280 billion is sitting in accounts across the country earning no interest at all, according to Bank of England figures. That's not £280 billion of carelessness. That's what happens when the default option keeps running and nobody ever shows you the alternative. If you're one small part of that figure, you're not the exception. You're the pattern most people your age fall into without ever sitting down and deciding to. Marion is 61, works part-time as a bookkeeper in Nottingham, and has built up £45,000 in her current account ahead of retiring in a few years. She isn't reckless with money. She's done exactly what most people her age were taught to do. Keep it safe. Keep it liquid. Keep it where you can see it. And leaving cash where it feels safe isn't a mistake you made. It's the default the system was built around, and most people your age did exactly the same thing. There's a small grey line on every bank statement that reads 0% AER, and almost nobody actually reads it, because it looks like every other bit of small print on the page. Here's where it gets a bit more reassuring, at least on the surface. The Financial Services Compensation Scheme now protects up to £120,000 per person, per authorised bank. That's real protection, and it matters. But protected from what, exactly? Being protected if your bank collapses is not the same thing as being protected from your own money quietly losing value while it just sits there. That's the question the rest of this video actually answers. Move that same £15,000 out of a current account paying nothing and into an easy access savings account paying around 5% AER, and Marion earns about £750 a year in interest instead of losing £420 to inflation. Same money, same year, completely different outcome, just because it's sitting somewhere that actually pays for holding it. Where it sits matters just as much as the rate. Interest inside a cash ISA is entirely tax-free, and it never touches your personal savings allowance. Interest in an ordinary savings account only stays tax-free up to that allowance, which is £1,000 a year for a basic rate taxpayer, £500 for a higher rate taxpayer, and nothing at all once you're in the additional rate band. For Marion, £750 of interest fits comfortably inside her £1,000 allowance if that's the only savings interest she has coming in. But add another account, another few £1,000s earning interest somewhere else, and she can go over that threshold without ever noticing, because nobody sends a warning letter when it happens. Put the same money in a cash ISA instead, and the question never comes up. Every penny of interest is sheltered, regardless of what else she earns. One thing worth checking before you assume you're spreading risk. Some familiar high street names share a single banking license with a sister brand. Opening accounts at what look like two different banks doesn't always mean two separate lots of £120,000 of protection. Check the license, not just the logo on the card. There's a real deadline attached to this one, and it isn't the kind of urgency worth ignoring. This tax year is the last one where someone under 65 can put the full £20,000 into a cash ISA. From the 6th of April 2027, that cash ISA limit drops to £12,000 a year for anyone under 65, while the overall £20,000 ISA allowance itself stays the same. Using the full cash ISA allowance before that date locks in more tax-free room than will exist afterwards. That covers money you might need at short notice. But what about the part of Marion's £45,000 she's fairly confident she won't touch for another 3 to 5 years, where a savings account's rate might not be the best return available? That's where gilts come in. A UK government gilt pays a fixed rate of interest, called a coupon, and hands back its full face value when it matures. Right now, a 2-year gilt yields around 4.37%. Put £10,000 into one, and it produces roughly £437 a year, for as long as it's held. That's a fixed contractual payment, not a hope built on where the market happens to be sitting on any given day. Most videos on this stop here and call it done, because any gain on the price of a gilt is completely exempt from capital gains tax. That part is true, and it's a genuinely good feature. What they usually leave out is that the coupon itself isn't the capital gain. It's taxed as savings income, and it counts against the exact same personal savings allowance you just used up with your cash ISA or savings account interest. So if Marion has already filled her £1,000 allowance with interest from her savings account, that £437 of gilt income lands on top of it, fully taxable. The headline said, tax-free. The coupon quietly wasn't. That's the trap. Not that gilts are a bad option, but that the capital gains tax exemption gets all the attention while the actual income tax bill gets none. Hold a gilt to maturity, and the return is essentially locked in from day one, which is the real appeal. Sell it early, before maturity, and you're exposed to whatever the price is doing that day, the same way you would be with any other asset. That certainty only holds if you don't need the money back early. Gilts and savings accounts both do the same basic job. They protect the number. Neither one grows real wealth much beyond inflation, and for money you genuinely don't need for a decade or more, that's not enough. That gap is exactly what pushes people toward the stock market, and that's where this video's real reframe starts. Picture two people who each retire with exactly £100,000 invested, and each draw £5,000 a year to live on. Retire hits a market fall like 2008, when the FTSE 100 dropped 31% in their very first year of drawing an income. To find that £5,000 they have to sell a much bigger slice of a portfolio that's already shrunk, locking in the loss before it ever has a chance to recover. Retire B experiences the exact same fall, the exact same size, the exact same market. The only difference is that it happens in year 10 instead of year 1. By then the portfolio has grown enough to absorb it without any forced selling at the bottom. Same average return over the full period, same crash, completely different outcome, purely because of when it landed. That's the part the 50-year, £10,000 becomes £500,000 projection never mentions. It assumes decades of growth with nothing being withdrawn along the way. Someone who's 58 to 65 isn't in year one of a 50-year story. They're much closer to the point where withdrawals start, and a downturn in the wrong year doesn't just dent the number, it can permanently shrink what's left to recover from. I used to think just put it all in an index fund and wait was solid advice for pretty much anyone. I don't think that anymore, not for someone who might actually need this money in 12 years, not 50. The way around it isn't avoiding index funds altogether, it's sorting money by when you'll actually need it. Anything needed in the next 1 to 3 years stays in cash or a cash ISA. Anything needed in 3 to 7 years can sit in gilts or lower volatility funds. Only the money you're genuinely confident you won't touch for 10 years or more belongs in a global index fund, because that's the only bucket with enough time to ride out a bad year without being forced to sell into it. Apply that to Marion's £45,000 and it stops being one lump sum making one decision. A slice for the next few years stays in her cash ISA. A mid-term slice sits in gilts. Only the portion she's confident she won't need for a decade or more goes into an index fund, rather than all of it chasing a 50-year growth curve she simply doesn't have time left to ride. Treat all of it the same way a typical index fund video suggests, with no buckets at all, and a fall in exactly the wrong year forces a sale from money that was never supposed to be touched yet. Split it by time horizon instead, and a bad year in the market never forces a sale from the part of the plan actually built for growth. It doesn't remove the risk, it just stops that risk from landing on the wrong pound at the wrong time. So what happens when this same wrong time horizon thinking gets applied to the fourth option? Gold. Gold gets sold as the ultimate safe haven, but it pays no income at all. No dividend, no coupon, nothing to draw on once you're retired and actually need money coming in. And the price can fall hard and stay down for years. Between the summer of 2011 and the winter of 2015, gold fell roughly 47%, from around $1,900 an ounce down to close to $1,000 an ounce. 10,000 pounds of gold bullion bars bought near that kind of peak could have been worth roughly £5,300 after a fall like that, with nothing paid out along the way to soften it. For someone who needs regular income in retirement, an asset that only pays out if the price happens to be up on the day you sell it is a fragile thing to build a plan around. The tax treatment isn't uniform either, and this is the part most gold videos skip entirely. Only bullion coins that count as UK legal tender, things like sovereigns, Britannias, and the Queen's beasts range from the Royal Mint, are exempt from capital gains tax. Any profit on those is entirely tax-free, with no limit. Gold bars and coins that aren't Royal Mint legal tender don't get that treatment at all. Any profit on them is fully taxable, the same as most other assets. So the price risk and the missing income are identical whether you hold bars or legal tender coins. The only difference is what happens to your profit if the price does eventually recover, and that's a real distinction worth knowing before you buy, not after. None of this means gold has no place at all. It can genuinely diversify a portfolio against certain shocks that hit shares and bonds at the same time. What it can't do is replace a knowable, regular payment, the kind you get from savings interest or a gilt coupon, with an unknowable price on whatever day you happen to need to sell. Drop in the comments which of these four you're already using, or which one you've already ruled out. I'd genuinely like to know. So here's the question that ties all four of these together. What actually happens to someone's plan if one of these choices gets tested by a real shock, not in theory, but the year it actually happens? Say Marion had taken the 50-year advice literally and moved everything, all £45,000, into an index fund. Then a downturn on the scale of 2008 hits in her very first year of retirement. That's not a hypothetical worst case invented for this video. It's the same kind of fall that's already happened before, more than once, to real portfolios belonging to real people. To cover ordinary living costs, she has to sell fund units while the price is down, and that permanently shrinks what's left to recover once the market eventually turns around. Now run the same downturn against the version of Marion, who used the bucket approach from earlier in this video. Her near-term needs are sitting in a cash ISA and in gilts, not in the fund. So when the market falls, she draws her income from those instead and leaves the invested portion completely untouched until prices come back. Same market, same fall, same year, completely different outcome because of one decision made months or years before the fall ever happened. This isn't a story about it already being too late. Someone who's still holding cash right now, before any downturn happens, has every opportunity to set these buckets up in advance. The point of this scenario isn't that a mistake has already been locked in. It's that there's still a choice available, and the choice matters more than most people realize until they've watched it play out. I don't know your exact numbers, or exactly how many years you've got before you need this money. Everyone's answer to that is different, and that's actually the point of all of this. The framework doesn't need your exact figures to work. It just needs you to be honest with yourself about the timeline. That one decision doesn't need to be complicated, and it doesn't need to happen all in one go. So what does someone actually go and do with this week, not just understand it? Start with the boring bit, because it matters most. Before any of this money moves anywhere else, confirm that 3 to 6 months of essential expenses stays in easy access cash or savings as an emergency fund. 6 months is the ideal target. 3 months is a reasonable place to start if you're not there yet. That's the buffer that keeps a market fall from ever forcing you into a bad decision. After that's covered, use this year's cash ISA allowance before the under 65 cap drops on the 6th of April, 2027. Then sort anything you're fairly sure you'll need in the next 3 to 7 years into gilts. Only the portion you're genuinely confident you won't touch for 10 years or more goes toward an index fund, sized the way we walked through earlier. If gold has a place in your plan at all, keep it small and stick to the legal tender coins that are actually capital gains tax-free, rather than treating it as a source of income it was never built to provide. If a bigger balance means spreading money across more than one bank to stay under that £120,000 protection limit, make sure they're genuinely separate banking licenses, not 2 brands sitting under the same one. Marion hesitates over all of this, and it's worth naming why. She's been with the same bank for decades, and she's worried that moving her savings will somehow disrupt her pension payments, or her direct debits, or show up somewhere and affect her credit. That worry is completely normal, not laziness, and it's worth saying clearly. Moving savings into a cash ISA or a new savings account doesn't touch the direct debits attached to your everyday current account, and it doesn't affect your credit score the way applying for a mortgage or a loan would. If that hesitation sounds familiar, you're not alone in it. I feel the same pull to leave money where it already feels familiar, even once the numbers say otherwise. The way through it isn't to force yourself to act all at once. Open the new account first. Transfer the money across gradually. Close nothing until you've actually confirmed the new setup is working the way it should. Acting on even one of these, especially the cash ISA allowance, is reversible and low risk. Waiting past the 6th of April, 2027 permanently reduces how much of it can ever be sheltered from tax in a cash ISA if you're under 65. So instead of one generic instruction to just invest it, you now have 4 ranked, concrete next steps for the exact cash that's been sitting there. None of the 4 options in this video is universally the safe one. A cash ISA is safe for money you need soon. Gilts are safe for money you need in a few years. An index fund is safe, in the way that actually matters, only for money you won't touch for a decade or more. Gold sits somewhere off to the side of all of it, useful for diversifying a portfolio, not for producing an income you can actually live on. Each one is safer for a specific stretch of time and a specific person, not safer in general, and that's really the whole reframe this video has been building toward. The question was never which single option is the safest. It was always which option is safest for how many years you actually have before you need the money. The buckets don't eliminate risk. What they do is make sure a bad year in the market never lands on the wrong pound at the wrong time, whether that pound needs to be spent next month or isn't due to be touched for another 15 years. If you want the version of retirement planning built around the years you actually have left, not 50 of them, subscribe. That's what this channel keeps doing, video after video.